see people popping in there. We'll wait till we have a little bit of critical mass.
Oh, and I'm off and I'm hitting mute. Bye guys.
Bye. As the numbers are climbing. First, before we actually get started, everybody, we do have the chat window open. So if you have any questions for the panelists as we're going through the program, if you just want to enter them in that chat window, we'll be watching for them and we will try to get to as many as we can at the end of the panel. And it looks like we have quite a few people in here, so I'm going to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Pinterest. This is presented by Comm Collective, and I'm Shamin Taylor-Smith. I'm a business and marketing strategist, and I'm your host for the panel. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon to talk with you about Pinterest. Back in the day, I worked closely with Ben Silberman at Pinterest way before anybody really knew what it was, to launch the Style Spotters program at High Point Market. And that was really my first foray onto that social media platform. And before we get too much further, I want to make sure I thank our host, Comm Collective. And that's a group of communications professionals. And right now they're working together during this time of global change to really generate constructive and authentic conversations like the one we're going to have today. So thank you. I'm glad we're talking about Pinterest because it really is an underutilized marketing tool in my opinion. And one thing I said recently is that I feel like designers sometimes want to chase the shiny toy instead of strategically thinking about where their clients are. So they're going to run to Instagram because it's fun. And I've heard some talk about TikTok because it seems fun. But I want you to think today as you're listening to our panelists about the demographics of Pinterest because they offer some interesting statistics. According to Pew Research, Pinterest has the highest household income average among users than any other social media platform. It's also predominantly female and in that sweet spot of 35 to 60-year-olds with money, may I add. In contrast, 67% of Instagram users are 18 to 29. Pinterest users are also there to shop. 90% of them make decisions on purchases based on what they see on Pinterest, and Pinterest drives 33% more referral traffic to websites than Facebook does. That's incredible. So let's meet our panelists and they'll give you even more information about Pinterest. First up, I'd like to introduce Janine Hayes of Afro Chic. It's a creative company that's involved in interior design, product design, fashion, content creation, all kinds of things, including Afro Chic magazine and their One Story Up podcast. And her Pinterest account has over 8 million monthly views and is among the top 5 African-American accounts on Pinterest. Kyla Herbis is the principal of House of Hipsters, a home decor and lifestyle blog that has expanded into a really influential design voice. She's also a power Pinterest user too. Pinterest actually hired her to design branded pins for the Pin Factory, and the Pin Collective named her their independent home decor tastemaker. She's spoken all over the world practically, sharing her Pinterest knowledge at Pinterest at the Altitude Summit, Digital by Design, Design Chicago, and the Design Influencers Conference. And last but certainly not least, Scott Meacham Wood. He's an iconic interior designer with a really signature style of timeless design. He has an amazing collection of fabrics and home furnishings and his own online store, all of which is called Scott Meacham Wood Home. And he was one of the earliest adopters of Pinterest that I remember in the design industry when it really wasn't well known at all. And today he is still recognized as a power user. He has over 500,000 followers on the channel right now. So as you can see, we have an amazing panel. So let's jump right in. I'm just going to throw the first question out to the group. Kyla will let you answer first. For your target client or customer, do you think that more of them are on Pinterest or on another social media platform? And how high does Pinterest really rank in your marketing focus?
Well, I joined Pinterest when I found out that it was Better Homes and Gardens' #1 traffic driver. So I was like, personally, I said I need to be on that. And for me, it is my #1 traffic driver to my blog. So I think it's probably one of the most important parts of my business.
And so it's a strong part of your marketing focus, obviously.
Definitely, definitely. If I am working on anything, whatever I'm working on, whatever campaign I'm working on, I press publish. The next step that I do is I go onto Pinterest just to push out my content on it.
And Janine, how about for you?
You know, we use Pinterest a lot. And from a design standpoint, from a residential interior design standpoint, our clients love it. They'll actually come to us with their Pinterest boards because Pinterest is the space where they've been dreaming up, you know, what they want to do next with their home. And we actually will go through those boards with them. And it's where we can identify color palettes that they might be interested in, furniture that they may be interested in, their style. So it's really helpful. I think I always look at Pinterest as this amazing visual mood board that we're all creating. And when you actually start to go through that mood board, you learn a lot about what you like, trends that you may not even notice. You know, one day I might be going through there and just realizing that, oh, I actually pinned a lot of purple today. And that just might be the mood that I'm in. And then, you know, we start to see that the community also starts to come together around that purple. So not only is it a great way for us to be able to work with our clients, but like Kyla said, we find that it is a major traffic generator. A lot of people do come to afrochic.com through Pinterest, whether they're looking at some of our content pins or they might be looking at some of our design work, and that's how they find us.
Okay, and Scott, you actually have two kinds of clients or customers, I would say, right? So you've got your interior design client, and then maybe your customer for Scott Meacham Wood Home. Do you see a difference in the way that they're on Pinterest? How are your target clients or customers on Pinterest?
Pinterest is definitely a part of our pie. It has to be. But it is interesting that you bring that up. I think for our kind of retail client who are buying things from Scott Meacham Home at retail pricing, that product gets pushed out on Pinterest. If it is things that we're working with the interior design community, that tends to go out more on Instagram. Instagram for me is a little bit more interactive and a little bit more social. So it's about a chat with a designer about a fabric or what else I have, or if we can customize something. It's a much more complicated conversation. So a lot of the kind of pretty pictures go out on Instagram, but Pinterest is definitely kind of meat and potatoes, product, tabletop, bedding, whatever that we sell directly to the public. That's probably the best source for that.
Well, that leads me right into my next question. So you've all had huge success. You all have tons of followers. But for each of your businesses, let's get down to brass tacks. How does that actually translate into business impact, like client queries or products sold? Scott, we'll just keep going with you. How does that work for you?
It's been much easier, and it was always easier with Pinterest because it was so kind of link centric. You could post the link to the product on your website on Pinterest, and someone, if they clicked on it, it would take them directly there. It's a very fluid, very linear transaction. So I can always tell immediately if we start posting things on Pinterest, those items are being the most searched on the website, the most clicked on the website. We also, through our site, which is on Shopify, you can see where your traffic is coming from, who's producing the most referrals to you. And if we're pushing on Pinterest, Pinterest immediately begins to work. It's not like it's barely even interesting. Like it's such a given that if we start pushing things on Pinterest, we will get traffic, and we often get conversions of that traffic into sales.
And Kyla, has that translated into actual money for you too, or actual clients? How does that work for you?
For me, Pinterest actually found me through Pinterest, which is kind of strange. But that's how they found me as a graphic designer to help them work in the pin factory. I got an email one day that said, hey, this is whoever from Pinterest, and would you like to do some work in our new pin factory that we're starting when we're working with brands? And this was, it must be like 4 years ago at least. It's been a while. And they had about 2 or 3 brands at that time, and then 6 months later they had 25, and now they have 100, like thousands and thousands of them. But it's that's basically how I found Pinterest, and how Pinterest found me. And through that, then it was more of a learning curve and a learning process, and watching the brands grow on Pinterest and me actually doing their marketing imagery and seeing the copy that was going into it, knowing the ratio of the height and width that worked with the algorithm best, that helped me to take that same concept and put it into my work. So it was kind of more behind the scenes for me than it was forefront.
And Janine, I know that you've got 8 million something views. So, I mean, is there a way to translate that into actual dollars? Do you use it to sell your brand, for example, to people?
You know, we do use it for sales, but Pinterest for us has really been more about community. And I think that's why we get the number of monthly viewers that we have. You know, we actually look at it as sort of a space where we can actually show beautiful imagery of African Americans, of people of the Black diaspora. We archive a lot of imagery. So you might be on Instagram and see like, you know, Lupita Nyong'o was on the cover of New York Magazine, then we'll actually archive that content. So it's not just what we're selling or what we're doing, but people are actually coming to see this imagery that inspires them. So we really do think about it more as this community space where people are coming back again and again to find that representative content. One of the things that we actually found, we actually spoke at Pinterest last year and did a keynote there about the politics of representation. One of the things we found is that when people are actually on Pinterest looking for African American content or imagery, you will usually see Afro chic pins in that feed. So we love that we're contributing in that way to making sure that people do see a lot more diversity and representation when they're actually going through the Pinterest feed.
Well, you lead into a question that I had about that too. So Pinterest has always been seen as the good guy in the social media world, right? But the company recently is receiving some pretty serious backlash related to diversity and racism. There was an article, I think in the New York Times recently, about turmoil within the company around those topics. So Janine, how much does that impact how you want to use the platform in the future or how you want to partner with them?
You know, it's definitely very challenging. You know, Pinterest is, you know, I met Ben too when he first started, and definitely understand, you know, where Pinterest was coming from when they were really working to start this space, and have just been an avid pinner for many, many years. And it was really sad to read that article and to actually read about what some of the employees have experienced. Also having gone out to Pinterest and really sat down with some of their leadership team to talk about diversity and inclusion. But one of the things that I've done and that we make sure as a brand is that any brand that we're partnering with, we really want to make sure that they're accountable, that we can feel comfortable having our audience come to that brand. And so we have actually begun to start conversations with some people at Pinterest that we've worked with before to actually talk about this issue and really trying to understand how they're going to address it. We need to make sure that no matter if we're in social spaces, you know, outside of our homes or in social spaces online, that they are safe spaces and accountable spaces for everyone who comes to the platform. So, you know, I think that we see the same conversations happening with Facebook as well. I think that, you know, we have this huge audience. People do love coming there and love being able to pin, and it's a happy place. But also as a brand, we also need to make sure that the partners and the places and the platforms we work with are accountable and actually inclusive, and also creating a safe space for their employees as well.
Scott, how about you?
I think in the last several months, we've all become more aware of what the experience behind the screen is, as far as the companies that we are promoting. And I think it's part of our responsibility to be on the good side of that at all times and in all spaces and at all times. I think the best thing we can do, which you brought up a great example of that, is just to be informed and realize that you can have an impact on the way that businesses are run, even as a user of that business, or someone who's using that business to promote your own business. I think we're all much better served by being better informed and realizing that what our power as consumers are, consumers who use these platforms, that we're not just widgets that have signed on to whatever platform it is, that we can still have an impact on the way that business is run and the way that it's monetized and the way that it reflects us in the outward facing world.
That's a good point. Kyla, how about for you? How do you feel about what you've read recently?
I haven't read as much from Pinterest, but just as a whole and everything that we're listening and hearing, as a blogger and sitting in my house behind my computer and not actually seeing people and seeing faces, I tend to scroll and look at pretty homes and always, that's all I see. So I think, like Scott was saying, we're more than just a widget, and we really do need to speak up a little bit more in that entire, with everything that's going on, and keeping our audience informed and also informing ourselves as well.
That's a good point. So let's move it a little more towards business again. How much traffic how much does Pinterest drive traffic to your website? So, you know, just kind of as a percentage, Scott, what does it mean to traffic on your website?
On a rough day, maybe 20-25%. On a good day, we might even, if I have been pushing out product on Pinterest, it'll swing up to 50 or 60%.
That's a really good number, actually.
Well, and the great thing about it is that it is very responsive to what I put into it. If I'm in a Pinteresty mood and I feel like sitting up for a couple hours and posting things, it will impact traffic almost immediately. And often will impact sales almost immediately. My Instagram numbers are fairly consistent regardless of their piece of the pie. Like that number is fairly consistent. So I feel like some of the Instagram stuff, it just kind of is what it is. But we have such a larger footprint on Pinterest. And I guess my kind of unending question is who are those people? Are they actual really customers of mine? Or are they just numbers at the top right hand of a screen that add up to something? And I think that's one of the challenges, especially as you start getting into a larger and larger subscriber rate, that you kind of lose. They may not just be there because they love you or they love what you have to say or they love your pictures. Maybe they picked you out because you liked something that they liked and you got into the algorithm and they found you and they're following you kind of passively. They may not be active followers. They may just be passive followers. So I think I don't try to get too tied up in the numbers because it doesn't matter until they really have bought something. I mean, that's not their only purpose, obviously. But unless it's one of their purposes, obviously. But to provide, I think kind of like Kyla said, to provide entertainment. It's been a rough couple of months and I certainly am not opposed to sitting and looking at pretty pictures for a couple of hours. To Janine's point, I also like the idea of learning more about history that I might not know about, or maybe that I haven't heard before. So I think it fulfills all of those. I think it can fulfill all of those purposes. That was a very meandering answer to a question. It was probably much more succinct than the answer that I gave you, but there we go.
There we go.
It's late on a Thursday.
Kyla, how about your traffic? How much does Pinterest drive traffic to your website?
I'm gonna say 70 to 80%.
Wow.
Whoa.
It's a lot, and it's not even, if I have a blog post that I'm pushing out, that is going to take a while for it to start gaining traffic to my site. What I see is it's pins that are 3 months old that are coming back in and getting 60,000 impressions in 7 days, which is insanity, but it does happen. If it's keyworded correctly, if your boards are keyworded correctly, and it's knowing that you have to plan ahead all the time as a blogger and as a content creator, because if you're pushing something out and you want it to go on Pinterest, it can take a while.
That makes sense. Janine, how about your traffic?
We get about 30% of our traffic regularly comes from Pinterest. And yeah, I mean, like Kyla said, I do love that it has that evergreen capability. I think that's really the nice thing about Pinterest, is that when you actually have maybe done a post that was 6 months old or a year old, that might still come back up in the algorithm and people are still being able to engage with it. So it's not necessarily like it's just your brand new content that people are seeing. There are older things that do come up. And so, yeah, I think people do need to understand that there is that great evergreen capability. So, you know, if you're making some great holiday content, don't think about it as like, oh, I made that a while ago and it's old. It never is old on Pinterest. There's no such thing as an old pin. They just live forever and they can come up again and again and again. I think people should really think about that when they're creating their content, or even when you're thinking about things that are shoppable. You know, there might be something that you may have put out and that might be in a colorway that wasn't too much that colorway, you know, maybe a year ago, but then that trend could come around and it comes back and people are starting to see it again.
Yeah, I also go back in and make new content, like new images for older posts. And then I pin that out as new content, even though it's an old link. It's still considered new content if it's a new image. And I also go into my old imagery. I have one, it's an Easter egg unicorn of a pin that keeps coming back, and it trends every holiday and every DIY gift time. It's from 2014 or 2015. It just comes back all the time, and it gets me featured over and over and over again every year. It's bizarre, but it's one really amazing thing, like Janine said, where it's evergreen.
I love that. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I've got a log cabin image from, I think, maybe 2011. I'm trying to think, like, it is seriously, and it just must have a gazillion pens. It is just, and I just put it up. It was not like it was intentional. It was just something in a mood board about fall. But you know, I love going back into my archives and seeing what pens are being pinned the most, and I will often kind of to Kayla's point, like I will repin them fresh. Still linking to the original source, but it's amazing what, out of the bazillions of images that I've posted, the dozen that are just head and shoulders above anything else I've ever penned.
Right.
And I think that as someone who is doing marketing, my own marketing, knowing that kind of image is responded to so well, often plays into our photo shoots and how we photograph things, new product, knowing that kind of imagery is what spikes the best on Pinterest.
And it also reminds me of something that I tell a lot of people that I work with, is to pin your portfolio to a lot of different boards for the exact same reason, because you can refeed them into a blue board or a living room board or a brass lamp board or whatever, and continuously feed that cycle. And so that leads me into, what's your best secret for using Pinterest most effectively? Janine, we'll start with you on that one.
Ooh. Hashtags. Hashtags are important. We use them a lot, and if you go on one of our top Pinterest boards, it's called Black Girls Rock. Our fashion, we use hashtag fashion. That definitely helps for people to, when they're looking up fashion trends, those pictures are going to come up again and again. I also invite people not to just think about pinning just from your website. You can pin straight from Instagram. We love to do that because that gets people over to your Instagram. And you can actually pin from other places too, like Spotify. Pinterest, one of the actual things on the Pinterest 100, they always release their trends at the beginning of the year. And one of the trends this year was actually music playlists. Not even knowing that we were about to be in a pandemic, but people were already spending more time listening to music and doing sort of indoor things. So definitely think about, if you have a monthly playlist, you can actually pin them straight from Spotify over to your Pinterest. So there's so many ways to be able to utilize Pinterest to not just go to your website, but to go to other microsites or other places on social media that you want traction and that you want attention to.
That's cool. Scott, how about you? What's your secret sauce on using Pinterest?
I probably fall into a trap myself of just pinning too much product, pinning too much commerce, and oftentimes maybe overlook pinning inspiration from other designers and other photographers and other. I think the best thing we can do as people who are providing content is provide really rich content and make sure that you are inspiring those people who have given you the great honor, the great privilege of following you. Like that is an absolute, it's a privilege to be followed by people that you don't know because they find you interesting or they find your products interesting. So make sure that you're giving them a real wealth of information since they are so kind to come to you to be inspired. Give them a lot, give them too much, give them photography, give them content, give them blog posts, give them product, give them your design work, give them other designers whose work inspires you. I think you almost cannot give them too much.
I agree with that. Kyla, how about for you?
I keyword everything. If I make an image, in the file name itself are keywords. Embedded into the image are keywords. When I put it into a board, the board itself is keyworded. The name of the board is keyworded. The pin description, the title, everything has been keyworded so that I'm more easily found because there's billions of pins out there that you're competing with.
I agree with that. Scott, speaking of which, you were a very early adopter of Pinterest. How has it changed or how has the way you use it changed since the early days?
It was like the wild, wild west when I joined. So you both knew Ben back in the old days when his office was on South Park, which is where my office was, and we were neighbors. So they were the building next door to me at our old office by the ballpark in San Francisco. And I signed on early and was very early on one of the recommended follows if you were in design or fashion or probably any of those things.
Oh, I remember when they had the recommended follows.
Yes, and that's where a lot of my first following came from. But what it meant was that there are people who followed me who didn't really want to. They just checked, 6 names that they were offered, and I was one of them, and all my things were on there. So there was a lot of, and it was hilarious. Like, why am I seeing this? I don't want to see this. Why are you? I'm like, I am not here. You're not programming my site, lady, or gentleman. So that was kind of the real, in the very early days, it was a real struggle because people, I don't think really knew how to use it. Didn't know how to, I was giving tutorials on how to unfollow me. Because if you don't want to follow me, oh my God, please don't. Please don't clutter up my world with your numbers. And if you're not intrigued by what we do, which is perfectly fine. So that was a very strange, couple of years until it started to kind of sort itself out. And I think that's, I for so long in all my social media platforms, this sounds kind of snotty, but maybe it is. It's not, you're welcome to be entertained by me. It's not my job to entertain you. So if what I'm posting doesn't thrill you or interest you, then oh my Lord, don't look at it. And follow someone else's work that does. There's enough out there. The width and breadth of inspirational pictures and different pinners and different Instagram people are endless. So I very early on got a little, not jaded, that's not the right word, and not combative, because that's not quite the right word either. But it was some days were long days with people fighting with me on Pinterest about the fact that I posted a pair of green shorts on a man who shouldn't wear shorts.
You are actually bringing up some serious memories that I had forgotten about, the conversations you and I had about people. Thank you. I now remember. Wow.
I'm glad we're all wounded by my history. That's nice to know.
Probably blocked it at some point to try and get over it.
Like you couldn't block people. You couldn't even remove them. It was like if they didn't like you and they wouldn't go away and they complained every day on every pin, it was just like part of your daily existence. And I was at that point getting emails when people commented on my pins, which I do not get anymore. And it would be all I would do some days.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was hilarious. It's
Kyla, well, thank God. Kyla, one of the things that I think is interesting about you that's a little different in some ways from what Scott and Janine have done is that the content creation on Pinterest. Content creation is so key for your business, obviously, and always has been. So what's the best way to use and promote content on Pinterest?
I think it depends on what you're trying to promote. If you're promoting a product, first thing, go back. Rich pins if you have a business account, get rich pins set up. It's like a little amount of code that you put in um, the first like page of your website, the index.html page. And once you drop that in, you get verified and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden you have access to things like making your profile a little bit more robust, and you can get access to the or the Pinterest analytics. And then you can also get these rich pins. The rich pins cause more keywords to come in. And if you're selling a product, you can actually sell the product straight through Pinterest rather than even having them come through to your website, which is really weird right now because I've noticed that. I don't know if anybody else has. If you've been on Pinterest in the last couple of weeks, you'll notice that when you do a search, all the keywords at the top are missing now, and it actually goes to shop instead of explore first. So there's 2 tabs that you can click on, and the shop comes up first, and everything is coming up in shopping, which for someone like me, who's a content creator, that's not good. So all of a sudden, all of my work and my traffic has dropped a bit because it's not coming through as articles anymore. So I sign up through Rich Pins as an article person, but did that answer that question?
Yes, it did. But I mean, are there specific ways that you promote the content on Pinterest too? Like, you have been an expert at creating really cool graphics for pins. So explain a little bit about how that works with your content.
So when I was working in the pin factory, the first thing that they would say is have a text overlay, have a nice vertical image. If you have something that's more horizontal, it's not going to be able to be seen within the feed, because if you look at your feed, everything is these longer horizontal. If you have something that's like this big, it's going to be missed. So always have that horizontal look. Have a little bit of a text overlay on it so your audience can clearly see what your pin is about. Because if you just have food, you don't know if that's food photography, if that's a recipe, if it's selling something within like a utensil or something. This way it's really clear. And then if you can put like a little call to action on the bottom, read for more. A lot of times that person, the end user, needs that extra push in order to say, oh, there's more to this. Click to view the recipe, click to see more of this room review, click to learn more about styling a coffee table. So those kind of things, I definitely put a little bit more text in it. I put a little bit more of a call to action in there. And then even in the description copy, I say, click to see more, click to view more, follow me for this, that kind of stuff, just to try to push people over traffic-wise.
Gotcha. Janine, for you, I have a little bit of a different question, because you do have those 8 million views and counting. So how does that help you and the Afro Chic brand in terms of partnerships or revenue?
It's definitely a big part when we're actually going out to work with brand partners, that we can talk about Pinterest. And I think for a lot of brands, Pinterest is still very new for them. They are so much more used to Instagram. People talk about Facebook. And then, like you said, Shimens, people want to get on TikTok, even though most of the people there are teenagers. And so they're not necessarily shoppers. If you're, thinking of going to like Lowe's, it's not going to be a 16-year-old. So for us, we were able to actually talk with the brands about how we can work with them and partner with them around some actual specialty pin boards. So we can do something where we have like an Afro Chic and Target Pinterest board. And then on that board, we can show a project that we've done. We can actually highlight some of the Target products that we've had, and people can actually then shop right from our pin board. So that really is helpful for brands. Another thing that we love to use and that we bring to the table with brands are story pins. They are, the amount of traffic that they get and that they're capable of getting is pretty amazing. So where you might get one pin that might have maybe over time, it might get like, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, maybe even 100,000 views. With our story pins, we're seeing like 300,000 views off of one story. And that actually allows us to do a little bit of micro blogging. So we can actually take something from the magazine and actually do almost like a little micro content piece from the magazine, or even a little micro content piece from a brand partnership. So Pinterest just gives us a lot of tools that we can actually work with brands that we partnered with over the years, and actually just kind of adds to our toolkit to say, hey, not only can we do a blog post, but people can actually go to these Pinterest boards and shop directly to some of the things that you're trying to promote.
So I'm gonna go, when I'm done with this, I'm gonna go make some story pins because I've been looking at them going, I don't know how to do these. I'll do it later. It's probably not important.
Or for anybody who doesn't know, it's a new tool. And so it's rolled out to some accounts, and I don't think they've rolled it out to all accounts yet. But it works like Instagram stories does in a sense.
And I do see it at the top of my feed every single time I go. If I'm searching for something, I usually get one served to me at least at the very beginning.
And I think that's one fascinating thing that all the social media platforms are doing, is they're constantly evolving. Sometimes for good, sometimes for ill, but it also is very user-friendly. Like I never feel like anybody's put something out that is so complicated that any person with any sort of savvy can't just figure out how to do it. You just have to kind of dive in and decide that you're going to spend a half an hour and just fuss with that and see what it does. And, you know, I often will make kind of a dummy one that I'll put up, just see how it goes, see what it looks like, and then I'll take it right back down. And then I'll make a real one. So I don't spend all day and lose something, but it's just, it's a fun way to experiment with how the platform works, which if you're kind of a techie nerd, that's a fun afternoon.
Well, that's what I did with TikTok, and now I'm addicted.
I can't find my way into TikTok. I've tried, I've looked at it, and I just like I can't get in. Which is
fun, and it's got a lot of fun bells and whistles, but it is a very young audience from a marketing standpoint.
And I think the other important thing to remember is, you know, I think as users, not that we're users, it's a horrible word, as people who use these platforms, experiment on them. If you experiment with Pinterest and it doesn't work for you, then try Instagram, try Facebook, try stories, try Instagram lives, just kind of experiment with all of it. See what works, see what inspires you, both as a consumer and as a publisher. And that's what you should be using. But my biggest recommendation is just to spend some time and play with them and see what they can do for you.
Yeah, I think that's really smart what you said, Scott, in terms of just being playful. I mean, you know, when we're all inside right now and being more limited in terms of being outside, people want experiences still. And so when you think about it, Pinterest is a place to have an experience. So you don't want to just be in a place where it's just like, oh, it's a feed, it's a feed, it's a feed. It's a feed, it's a video, there's a story, right. There's something to shop. It's like being in a very interesting, like virtual mall in a way, and you're able to kind of pick and choose how you want to engage with it. So I think we just can never forget that, you know, as content creators, we're actually here to give people some unique experiences, and you can use your Pinterest as a way to give people that experience.
Right.
That and if you look at Pinterest as well as a search engine, I mean, it's where people are discovering interests for themselves. They may not realize that they're interested in roller skating or they're interested in going to Cuba, but it's discovering those things, and all of a sudden that smart feed starts feeding them more keyworded things that they're going to keep interacting with until they finally buy that pair of Moxie roller skates, or they finally book that, you know, trip to Cuba that they've been wanting to go to, or they finally buy that table from Scott that they've wanted for their dining room, you know.
Hurrah!
It's definitely a fun discovery tool that they're using from maybe I can to I think I like this to I'm going to make a purchase. So it takes some time for them to go work through that process, but once they're in the process, they do usually buy.
I think they've also been very clever on Pinterest, because we hear a lot about the algorithms on Instagram and Facebook constantly being futzed with, and then you're frustrated because your followers aren't actually even seeing anything that you're posting. Whereas on Pinterest, you've got both the ones that are things that you're interested in, they're curating for you. and then you have your following or your followers, the people that you're following, you can still see that feed by clicking on that button too. I'm going to get to some questions that we have coming up in the chat, and I'm going to put two of them together because I think they're both quick answers. The first one is, how much time on average do each of you spend a week on Pinterest? And the second one is, do you all use a scheduler like Tailwind or Later? Anybody can start.
I'll go. I use a scheduler. Everything that I push out, if I'm pushing out content, as soon as I press publish, I go and manually push that into Pinterest or pin it to Pinterest. And then I take those and I pin them to my Tailwind. And I push them out to, in Tailwind, you have tribes, if anybody's familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
I push all of that out to tribes to start having like-minded pinners pin my content when I'm pinning theirs. It's like a pin for pin kind of thing. And then at night, sometimes I may or may not be bored and I'll just go on Pinterest. If that's the case, I mean, it could be like I'm just pinning my face off all night long and on a tear. But, and if you're following me during that time, I apologize. But otherwise, I usually go through and spend an hour or two a week on Pinterest, and I pull what I think my audience will like into Tailwind, and I just schedule it out. I just batch it.
Okay.
I wish I was as organized as Kyla, but very organic. Usually it's like I wake up in the morning, I try to do my meditation app, that usually helps. And after I meditate, then I usually do like 5 pins in the morning. And I try to always make sure I do that. That's like the business pins, or like, make sure you do 5 pins. And then if throughout the day, it could be anytime, I just might, because I'm always on there looking for something, you know, it's like, I'm going to make something later. I learned how to make biscuits. Like my grandmother used to always make biscuits. Unfortunately, she passed. And I was like, oh, I still want to learn how to make them. So I went and I found the buttermilk biscuit, you know, recipe. Did not go well the first few times. It failed because I did not have all the ingredients, and thought you could skirt baking, and I realized you cannot skirt in baking. You really have to know what you're doing.
No, baking is science. It's math.
It really is science. But then, you know, after that, went back and, you know, I'll do a recipe, or I might be looking at a house trend, or I'm like, oh, wait, my plant's not looking right. Maybe I need to, you know, get some plant tips, plant mom tips, and I'll go on Pinterest for that. So I'm really on there a lot during the day, or probably a little bit too much. So I will say I definitely spend at least 2 hours every day on Pinterest, and about.
It sounds like you're Googling.
Yeah. I have a problem.
Scott, how about you?
And I'm usually kind of right in between you, which is interesting because I am much more kind of organic about it. Like I don't have a set pin number that I do every day, and I probably should. I like that idea, but I don't do that at the moment. So I tend to kind of like burst pin for a couple of hours, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. So it's not, I'm not consistent. I will take ownership of that, and I will flail myself later for not being a consistent pinner. But the mood has to strike me. Like I have to do it when I'm inspired by it. Or if I find images, maybe they're images that I use to create an Instagram story series of, and I've already saved them. I'm like, oh, we should use this again. They should go on my Tumblr. They should go into my Pinterest page. So it's often about just making sure that if you're creating content on one of the platforms, that it's applicable to another one, that you're sharing them on multiple platforms, because you've done the work, you've done the research, you've found the images, you've saved them, you've labeled them, you've tagged them, put them in as many places as you can find to put them where they might be useful and might be found by others.
As unmuted. Another question.
Oh my God, I've got deaf. Oh.
It was me. The doorbell rang. Do any of you promote on Pinterest like you do on, let's say, Instagram or some other platform? Do you do any boosting or advertising at all on Pinterest?
No.
I have done it in the past when you first could do it way back in the day. So 2014, 2015, I did it. What's nice about it is that if you promote a pin, that pin stays evergreen. It doesn't go away. Whereas if you're promoting or boosting something on Facebook and Instagram, it's going to be gone in that after that duration of time. The pin will always stay. But personally, I didn't notice any difference really in it. So I just never did it again. I'm sure it's much better than it was 4 or 5 years ago.
How about you, Janine? Have you ever done any boosting?
Yeah. No, we don't. We don't. I'm a really big believer in just trying to get that authentic connection, with your followers. So everything we've done on Pinterest has been very organic, and just, the people who come are the people that have connected, with Afro Chic in some way. And I will say that, Pinterest does come and they'll be like, we would really love for you to promote, and I'm like, no, I don't need to. So it's just not something that I feel like we need to invest in. Like, we already have a bunch of people that come and they really already like the content. But I think that I really think that when you're on social media, I think we all feel the need for like these numbers, just like that's how we say that something's valuable. But I do think we should not always get stuck in the numbers. I think it's really about community, authenticity, and if you're putting things out there that you love and that are about really truly reflect you and your brand and that it connects with people, that's the most important thing. That's what's going to bring them back again and again and again. So whether you have millions of people or you might have thousands of people coming, but those people come back again and again because there's something about you that they're connected with, and that's where a brand's strength really, really occurs. So I just invite people to don't worry about the numbers, just get started on what you like, what you love, and just start putting it out there. You're going to find that audience and you'll build, and they'll build along with you.
I agree with that.
I have to give you a Broadway quote here, from an old show from the 90s, that I always think about whenever I get too like grinded into my numbers. There's a great Broadway song. It's called "I'd Rather Be 9 People's Favorite Thing Than 100 People's 9th Favorite Thing."
Yeah.
And that I should cross stitch that on a pillow, because I think that is important when you start getting too bound up in your numbers. It's what who those numbers represent, and what your interaction with them is, and what their interaction with you is.
Well, and that leads me to a really great question here too from a viewer. Do you follow your analytics?
Yes.
And?
I find them, I just, as a business major, as an accountant major, as a number nerd, I'm really fascinated by them, because certainly on Pinterest, the numbers are so large. It's interesting to see what people respond to, what people engage with. But I don't, I couldn't tell you, other than those 12 fans I'm fascinated by, that are still just doing gangbuster engagement. It's not like I don't think I've ever put anything on Pinterest with the idea that it's going to be popular, because that just doesn't seem like what I want to do. I want people to be inspired and entertained, but I don't want it to be this thing that I created in a lab to be popular.
But you do pay attention, as you said, to.
I do. I find
you might set up a photo shoot or something.
Right. Well, right. It's interesting the way that like multiple, like if there's a magazine shoot from, let's say, like House Beautiful, and there are a couple versions of the room, and one of the versions is just head and shoulders better than all the rest of them. That's fascinating to know as an artist, as a marketer, that sort of imagery does better than something else. But I'd like to think that I'm not being that manipulative about it. I hope. We'll
How about you, Kyla? How much attention do you pay to analytics, and how do you respond to that information?
I am a numbers nerd as well. I'm all about the analytics. I do check that on, if not a weekly basis, it could be a couple of times, a week that I check that. I liked the old analytics of Pinterest back in the day because I could see what my pinners, people that are viewing or pinning my stuff or anything that I'm pinning, whether it's coming from my blog or whether it's just stuff that I'm repinning from other people's content, I could see what their interests were. So I knew that, their favorite color was whatever, and they shopped at Etsy more and they read BuzzFeed. So when I would push out content, I would say, okay, I'm going to always do an Etsy roundup. I'm always going to do this, and I'm going to focus on this color. So now it more or less just tells me what my top pins are. I go in and I do look at that and I go, okay, what are they repinning? Because when I'm looking at my pins, a lot of times I have no idea what's being repinned anymore. If it's a power pin, how many repins it's gotten in a week versus forever. Like, you cannot see that stuff anymore because people who were trying to grow were kind of trying to fudge the algorithm. So now it's just showing my top pins. So it's showing more of what my users want to see from me. So if it's home tours of somebody else, or if it's more of my dining room, or if it's more roundups, whatever that is, I am focusing on that. And then I also play with, I just pushed out a blog post about skincare, and I'm going, okay, now I'm going to go back and look at those pins in my feed and in my analytics and see if it's resonating at all with my audience. Do I need to add a new board? Do I need to just drop it in my repertoire altogether?
Janine, how do you look at your analytics?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I just said don't pay attention to your numbers too much, but yeah, absolutely, from a business standpoint, I do look at the analytics. It's interesting though, like for me, I guess the way that I don't ever look at them to think about, should I, follow this sort of pin trend, or should I pin more of this? It just kind of really gives a pulse about where our audience is. I'm always just very intrigued by, what they might be into. And so one of the things that I find, it might just be my brain, I'm very interested in like trends and how things change, might be more like, if I see that I'm pinning something that I don't feel, it's not a stylized, crazy stylized image, and actually might find that image actually resonates with people more. And over the last few months, we've been kind of seeing more of that. You kind of see articles about how sort of the Instagram image is not a thing anymore. People don't want everything to be bright and shiny anymore. People want more reality. They want to see what life actually looks like for all of us. And I am starting to see that on Pinterest, that those kind of pins, or it might just be a friend of ours that's out with their child that we may have pinned from Instagram, from an Instagram story, put it over on Pinterest, and that's actually resonating with people. So those analytics definitely show you where an audience is. One of the other things that I found, I don't know if anyone's ever has thought to do a study on it, is the analytics change depending on the mood of the state of things in the world, and also just in the country. So I have found that when things were very, when we had, everything was very heightened, even a couple of weeks ago, we did not have a lot of Pinterest interaction, but our Instagram interaction was like crazy. And the same thing when COVID first started, it wasn't a lot of Pinterest interaction, but the Instagram was going up. So, sometimes I just look at that to go, wow, people are you're not in that sort of state right now where they want to be looking at pretty things. They're thinking about things. They're probably spending more time looking at the news or reading news, or, they're over on Instagram because they're going through a feed and kind of getting caught up on what's happening in the world. And that just gives you insight into what people are feeling. And that can help me as a content creator think about the tone of what I might be putting out in that moment.
And I think from our end, we've discussed this even within our own team during these last several months that have been very tense and challenging. Like, my idea was like, let me give something out there who people who want to escape the news. Let's be really pretty, and and just so if you need to take a half an hour break from the news, there's a place to go that's interesting and inspiring and pretty, and it doesn't need to. Sometimes it needs when it does get really tense, you almost need to counter program that. Something we talked about inside the team for the last several months.
Kyla,
Janine also hit on something a while back in the beginning of this talk where she was talking about the Pinterest 100. And I think that's a really, really important article that Pinterest pushes out in usually late November, early December. Is that right?
Early December, yeah.
Yeah, and then I also check their news feeds to see if there's some monthly trends that are coming up as well. Just because it's great to have, like you said, a pulse on that to see what's coming up in the next 3 months, because it is what people are starting to search for, and they just give that to you. So back last December, people were searching for something like called granny pods, and apparently they were trending. I had no idea. She said they're out. Granny pods are in.
wow. Not sure I want to know what that is.
It's a space in your backyard for your in-laws.
Okay.
A little kind of
Or your family.
self-contained guest house.
Yes.
In the South, we call that a granny shack.
Well, granny pods are trending right now, or they were trending back in December and for this year.
It's actually a better word than a shack. Okay, last question. Is anybody using shoppable pins, especially those of you obviously with product?
We do. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, you ladies first.
Yeah. Thank you. No, we do. We use shoppable pins. They're fantastic. I mean, they're great. You can, basically you're grabbing pins from your website, but you can also work with. This is where you can actually do some really great work with your brand partners. So, if you're a content creator, those shoppable pins, again, can become part of your arsenal with your brand partner to be able to actually promote their content and their pieces and things that they're trying to get out there. I definitely let people know, absolutely utilize them, use all the tools. The great thing about social media is it's free. It's like we have these free things, and I feel like, why don't we use every aspect of it to help us build our business? If you can't afford to have a full marketing team, which many of us can't, you actually though can use these social media tools. The worst thing that can happen is that you go, oh wow, no one really actually engaged with that particular pin, and then you go on to something else that you find your audience does engage with.
And Scott, how about you?
I think that's the best advice we can give, is just open the toolbox up and see what's in there and see what works and see what fits in your hand well, see what tools work for the things, for the house that you're trying to build. And if you try something, we've used shoppable pins. They've not been incredibly productive for us. And I don't know why, and I guess I don't care, because we tried it and it didn't work, so we don't do them anymore. So I think it's all about what works for your brand and for your market and for the people who follow you and how they want to engage with you. So
try them again. Try
right.
them again now. Like last 2 weeks,
really,
something big has shifted.
I agree entirely.
And I think that's fascinating. I remember when I lived in Northern California forever, so I'm a big Apple nerd. The thing I loved about Apple products was that they didn't come with instructions, that you had to learn about them socially. It was this thing that you could hold in your hand, and it was the entire universe in your hand. But if you wanted to see how to search for something, you had to ask a friend of yours how they did that. And I think social media is the same way. Like, it doesn't come with instructions. You just have to get into it and roll your pant legs up and just get in the mud and see what happens. But so often things change, and you find out about them socially. I will try promoted pens again and selling pens again, because if something has changed in the last 2 weeks that I don't know about, this is an amazing platform to find out about that.
Try it again, and try it with try making a pin. So if you have it like in an actual vignette or beautiful photo that you're using in Instagram, take that and put it at the top or the bottom, put it at the top, and then have a little like overlay, and then put the product in the bottom. It's,
Nice.
it's it'll be a nice horizontal or vertical
Right.
pin, and you're getting the beautiful visual part of it, but then you're also getting in the meat and potatoes of the shoppable part.
And also a really lovely call to engagement, like shop, click here to shop or whatever. I
Exactly.
I love that idea of like kind of standing on the front porch and inviting people in, not
Exactly.
just leaving the door open, like you can just come in, but like being there and being very active in that engagement.
And then if you have, and this is coming from the Pin Factory, if you have a beautiful photo of say a dining room, and say you sell tabletop items and the dining room table, put the dining room table on the bottom in one of those, you know, outlined silhouette photos with some of the tabletop pieces, write a blog post about it, and then also sell.
Yeah, I think that comes back to like whatever content you're creating, see how many different ways you can
do it lots of different ways.
spin it. How many different ways can we spin this table out?
Yep.
And that's a great place to stop. We've reached our time. Thank you all so much. And for those of you who are following along with us, over in the chat box, you can see contact information and Instagram handles, ironically enough, for all of us here on the panel. And thank you all so much. I've learned a lot too, and I hope everybody watching has too. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank
Bye, everybody.
you. Bye-bye.